everyone, my name is Miguel Magalhães and welcome to DeNites TV, the videocast where we talk about all things Web3 in Portugal and around the world. Last week we had our first episode where we reviewed what happened in 2022 and made some predictions about 2023. This week we're going to our usual format, which I hope works well. The idea is, as I said in the first episode, to briefly make a recap of the most important stories of the week in Web3, and then go into a specific topic of Web3, where with guests we'll be able to probably and hopefully reach some good solutions for some of the challenges that this industry is facing. With me, I have this week Tiago Araújo from DeHouse, which is a Web3 hub in Porto. Tiago, how are you doing?
Very good, Miguel. First of all, thanks for the invitation. I'm very glad to be here. And thanks for the invitation from you, Miguel, and also from DeNites TV. I'm very glad to be here, and especially with João, that you are going to introduce after, because João is a recent friend, but we talk almost every week right now, so it's good to have this podcast with him.
Thank you very much for making the introduction.
Yeah.
João is also with us, João Rosado, who is the head of incubation in Startup Lisboa. João, thank you for being with us.
Hi everyone that is listening. Hi João, hi Tiago, how is everything going? Thank you very much for this invite, and also thank you to DeNites TV for the opportunity. I think it's really a pleasure and a super important initiative for the Web3 community here in Portugal. So congratulations on that. The first episode was really cool. So glad to be invited for the second one. So I think Tiago, it means that we are kind of important, you know.
Yeah, the second episode. Yeah.
The pressure, the pressure is making sure that each episode is better than the last one. So,
yes.
As I said, the idea now it's make a quick recap of the week in Web3, and I chose 3 stories that I think they are important to mention, and I wanted to get your feedback before we get to the main topic, if you want, which is we're going to discuss the Portuguese Web3 scene in terms of what has been the evolution, what has been the main challenges that we as an ecosystem are trying to find as solutions together, and hopefully between someone that it's responsible for a hub in Lisbon and someone that is responsible for a hub in Porto, we'll be able to find some of the things that are working and some of the things that probably need some improvement. But before that, let's go to the recap. Okay. I think the main event of this week was the announcement that Amazon Web Services and Ava Labs with Avalanche made an important partnership, which basically consists of the Amazon Web Services network starting to run some nodes from Avalanche and being kind of the gate for companies that are not necessarily working with Web3 technologies to make that transition in a smoother way. Tiago, I'm starting with you. How have you seen this development, and being you onboarding so many Web3 companies right now, how important is this partnership, especially being Amazon Web Services, the main cloud provider in the world, to onboard the next generation of companies in this industry?
So I believe this is a very positive partnership. It's very important for the ecosystem, because it is between an established Web2 company like Amazon Web Services and or with a newer Web3 company like Avalanche. So this partnership can potentially bring new opportunities and developments and advancements in the field of decentralized technology. I think mainly this, but most of all, this will help to bridge the gap between the traditional Web 2 and the newer Web3 technologies. I think this is the most important thing with this partnership, and I think it's very good for the ecosystem and for all Web3 companies.
Yeah, João, recently there was also the announcement of a partnership between Google Cloud and Ethereum. Do you believe this is an answer to that partnership? It's Amazon kind of trying to create. I believe this can be also in terms of promotion and positioning in terms of Web3. But do you believe that that's a direct response to some of the work that Google said it was starting to develop in Web3?
Yeah, I think nobody wants to be against the fight, against this journey of everything going a little bit more Web3. I think everyone wants to take the lead. Everyone also wants to take advantage of being the first. So I think this can be a direct answer, or just a market reaction of everyone is getting to understand better the Web3. So let's start to provide these tools for everyone to start to do that gap. Obviously, that can be also an answer, because, for instance, the Google approach was also with Ethereum and Solana. So by having two different competitors is like a run of who is going to take the lead and who is going to have the best conditions to do the onboarding. But I think it's the normal stuff, and really important for the overall ecosystem to see two really important providers in the Web2 field to do this gap to move to Web3. So I think major congrats for both companies to do this step. And from my perspective, it's just a matter as well for much more other companies to start to do so. We see this in Portugal, much more companies adopt this. So I think it's just a market condition to move to Web3.
Yeah, I believe so. And talking about Ethereum, this week we also had an important news about Ethereum, which is it reached a milestone of 500,000 validators, which is, of course, an important milestone for the network overall, because in theory, not in theory, but in practice, more validators mean the ability to run more transactions, and also having, hopefully, less expensive transactions.
Yeah, less.
How, Tiago, I'm going to start with you as well in this one.
Okay.
How important is this milestone in a context where Ethereum recently, of course, went through a transition and exactly the merge? How important is to reach this milestone right now, and what can it bring for Ethereum's future in the coming months?
Yeah, I don't know if I have much more to say about this. It is 500,000 validators, so it is a significant milestone, like you said. It demonstrates that Ethereum has a large participants in the network. I think generally it is very positive, as it means that the network is more secure and it's more resistant to centralized control or manipulations. And like you said, I have to repeat what you said. This could mean that we have more faster confirmations, faster confirmation times, and lower transaction costs. I hope it means also this. And I have nothing more to say about this news, but I think it is very positive for the ecosystem.
João, 22 saw Ethereum still being the largest blockchain in terms of development, but there are lots of other networks, and we just talked about Avalanche that are going after the throne. Let's call it that way. Do you believe that this is just one more sign that probably the future of the development of decentralized application and smart contracts will still be around Ethereum, or do you believe that 2023 might appear other rival for Ethereum's dominance?
Yeah, that's a really cool question. I'm going to be here trying to, like, for instance, here in Portugal, we have been seeing like a lot of NIR, for instance, and they are also a cool solution, also fast and secure. And we have been seeing a lot of users being onboarded here. For instance, companies like Mintbase that have been doing that work here in Lisbon, for instance. I think it's like also can be in the future a major competitor. Obviously, we can't compare right now both of them in terms of like investment that they are doing, even the foundation of Ethereum Foundation, the money that they spend in projects and grants. Obviously, it's giant, so really important for the ecosystem. But I think also for that news is also important to gain trust. And if that type of news started to appear more in the mass media, and having more people to talk about how this can be more secure, how this can become something that even today I was talking with one of our incubated startups, and they are doing something that is basically the centralization of all your accounts. So basically, instead of you to have different platforms, you just use one platform to basically have your email, have your bank accounts, your WhatsApps, every subscription in just one tool. And the conversation was, okay, so you are doing the opposite way. So you are doing the centralization. And the guy was, no. I want to be Web3 because what I'm going to do is, for the users, it's just a normal Web2. But for everyone that really knows, this is a Web3 because I'm doing the storage with a Web3 solution to just do the integrations. So I think it's something that is going to be super normal to have more players coming for these markets. Obviously, then we are going to see the legislation and the way that the taxation is going to be, and all the law players are going to be for these layer 1 and layer 2s. But it's a matter of us to see and to continue to test these different solutions and see which ones are responsive and are better for us. So I think it's really, I agree with Tiago, really good and really important news. It's just a matter of time to continue to see this bear market to start becoming bull. We wish, obviously.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And to finish up this quick recap, I wanted to mention the story of Coinbase that in the last few days announced another round of layoffs. And in the last couple of weeks and in the last couple of months, centralized exchanges have been kind of the topic around Web3 because most of people see that the lack of regulation and they as the I'm not going to say as the ones to blame, but kind of the issues that have kind of jeopardized the trust that Web3 as an industry was building was derived from cases and events within those companies. How do you believe that, and I'm going to ask to you again, João, how do you believe that this situation with the issues that Coinbase is facing, being in a very different situation from exchanges such as FTX or Celsius or the other ones that had faced some issues, and being a company that is in the stock market and of course abides by different rules than these companies, what do you see these signs of restructuring in the company? Do you believe it's just a timing of, okay, let's prepare for the coming year? Or do you believe that this can be a further sign that the industry overall is still readjusting to this type of companies?
So here I see market conditions again, I think you see like a Web2 company that is Meta. Obviously, they are doing also a few experiments on the metaverse, but they are a Web2 company and they did the same. So the downsizing of the company, let's say, with a lot of layoffs. So I think it's normal to see these happening in these not only a bear market for Web3, but also the economical cycle. We have been affected by the war. We have been affected by the pandemic. So it's normal for the companies to need to readjust their expenses in terms of operational costs. So I think it's pretty normal, and I wouldn't say that this is like it's an important news, obviously, because it can have different ways to look at it. But in my opinion, it's just a normal market condition, a company readjusting because they had a crazy year in 2021 in terms of like the Q1, the Q2, and even the Q4 with major profits and revenue doing. So it's normal after 1 year of like skyrocketing, the other year being the completely opposite. It's normal for them to need to readjust. And if we think about like as a VC perspective, they are saying the same for the companies. Like, please increase your revenue and work on your and not revenue, but in your runway, and increase your runway and lower your burn rate. So it's pretty normal, I would say.
Do you believe, Tiago, that when so many events around CeFi, centralized exchanges, have been appearing, in the end, we prefer a case of a company that that abides by the stock market and has some sort of further regulation than the other companies? This is a better sign than probably some exchange that is not regulated. Some at some point showing up that they weren't doing the right things?
Yeah, I think maybe the markets prefer that, but regarding the case of Coinbase and the layoffs that you mentioned, I think we shouldn't link this to Web3 companies. Like João said, I think this is a overall in the market of tech companies, Web2 and Web3, and we saw that in every major big techs like Meta or Facebook, like João said, but even in Amazon, Twitter, everyone, I think Microsoft, Tesla, everyone, they did the same. And I definitely think that we shouldn't link this to just to Web3 companies. I think this is in general, unfortunately, this is happening in all the major companies.
Okay, yeah, I agree as well. Guys, this was the quick recap and the stories that we chose to give our 2 cents. Let's call it that way. Before we move on to our main topic of the episode, I wanted to mention the sponsor of this episode, which is WalliD, that took part in the first episode. And so I wanted to kind of make a rewind to what Philippe said the previous episode and how he presented what was WalliD and what is kind of their roadmap for 2023.
Yeah, WalliD, what we're doing pretty much is making authentication on the blockchain, and not only on the blockchain, seamless. So what we are at the end of the day, we are an aggregator of authenticators and ID providers. So we make it easy for the app developers, so decentralized app developers, to onboard users that do not know how to use a Web3 wallet. So you have all the Web3 features without needing your user to know how to use a wallet. And oppositely to that, if you are a traditional web app developer, you can rely on the blockchain features and the blockchain capabilities without your user needing to go and doing and owning a Web3 specific wallet. And well, we do this actually adding on top of it the ability to verify users' data based on all digital ID infrastructures out there. And the main thing is that we rely on the specific features of the blockchain and the crypto to ensure that all the data is owned by the users. Nobody has access to that data without the user knowing or actually authorizing it. So we only leverage on those crypto features to build our product. So pretty much that's it. If you're a web app developer, you want to onboard more than 3% of the people, then come talk to us. If you are a traditional app developer, you want to use the blockchain, but you don't want your users to go with all the crypto lingo, with all the crypto text, come talk to us.
Thank you once again, Flip, for taking part on the last episode. If you want to find more about WalliD, you can always send an email to DeNites TV at gmail.com, or you can go to WalliD website. Moving on to our main topic, which is the Portuguese Web3 scene, which is kind of cool because I have someone from Lisbon and someone from Porto. So, of course, the first question will be, which is the better hub, Lisbon or Porto?
Tiago, this one you can't compete.
No, I can, because the better hub is Portugal, So
congratulations.
Porto. Yeah, Portugal, for me, Portugal. The whole country is the better hub in the world, in the whole world. So, but I think Porto and Lisbon have great conditions. Yeah, I think Porto and Lisbon have great polite answer, right? I think Porto and yeah, I think Porto and Lisbon.
I like how João started. Tiago, of course, you know the answer, but he gave the polite answer. But what I wanted to really answer, it's in 2022, Portugal as a startup ecosystem kind of celebrated its first decade. Startup Lisboa celebrated its first decade. There were a lot of important stakeholders within the Portuguese tech ecosystem that kind of reached that milestone. And what I wanted to hear from you first, João, was what would you choose as the starting point of the Web3 movement in Portugal?
Yeah, that's a really good question. In my perspective, I could say there are two different moments, and the first one are like probably in 2019 with the first. I think we start to see a few pop-ups of companies that right now are like the top notch in our ecosystem, but also I think in 2021. I would say 2022 probably as well. Were a good years because you saw a lot of massification in terms of the, like also media attention. I don't want to say that the Web3 community started over there, but I think it started to gain much more attention and traction. And in that perspective, I think it's like a reward, you know, it's getting much more attention, getting much more investment, getting much more builders to do stuff. That is really what we need. So from my perspective, it's really the end of what we knew it as the entrepreneurship and the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and the new type of entrepreneurs and the new type of ecosystem that is being built over like initiatives like DeNites. That I think it's really what we need for the ecosystem, and really the good kickoff of a really strong ecosystem that we see in Portugal. And I think obviously there are a lot of different contexts that basically make that influence on the ecosystem as overall. But I would say that I would pick up these last few years as strong years for the Web3 Portuguese community.
Tiago, do you believe that in Lisbon and in Porto, the movement kind of popped at the same time, or there was kind of someone following the lead of the other, either in terms of projects that appear, but also in terms of events, right? Because it's sort of the movement is kind of dependent on the formation of a community as well, and it can be debatable on who started to build the community of Web3 first, right?
Yes, and I will give you a different answer because in my opinion, I'm original from Braga, and in my opinion, the movement started in Braga.
That's really good.
And for me, it would be my answer. For me, it started when uTrust ICO happened. I don't know if it was the first ICO in Portugal, but I think it was around 2017 or 2018. I'm not sure. But I think the movement really starts in Braga with companies like uTrust, Visual. They were the ones who believed first in the project, at least in my opinion. I know that a lot of people was investing in crypto and studying crypto since 2010 or 2011. I know that a lot of people was doing that on that time. A lot of years ago, but in my opinion, I totally agree with João when he says that this Web3 movement was more popular in these two couple years that we have, like 2021 and 22. But for me, the starting point was when companies like uTrust and Visual appear and start invest in this movement. At least it was when I realized that, okay, this is happening. This is happening, and it was in Braga, not in Portugal, but in Braga.
Yeah, that's I think you touched on a really important point. The first cameras as the first wave. Like I think Aptoids was also one of the first. I'm not sure. And I think like these type of first movements that then they started to create their own stuff. And the people that were there started to create their own stuff, like with, for instance, BPro, that then you have a lot of different folks from BPro that are doing things, like from Pocket Starter as well. So I think that's wave. So Tiago, brilliant answer. I would say, like, to really identify these first nuggets that were appearing. And I think that's what we see. So like the generation of like the layoffs that we see from Facebook that originate and started to create their own stuff. I think that's the generation of builders that in 2022 everyone knows were from something that before was happening. So that's a good way to see it. Yeah.
I want to get your view since first from you, João, because of course in Startup Lisboa there was the growth of the Portuguese ecosystem in a Web2 world, right? And is there any difference in the support that you guys are used to give to companies, that it's different from Web2 natives to Web3 natives? Are some issues in terms of either infrastructure or the support that you give, that when you guys prepare either acceleration programs or either other types of support, that you need to take different things into account?
Yeah, I think I will identify two different things. The first one is 10 years ago when Startup Lisboa was born, almost 11 years ago. So we are going to do in February 11 years. I think there are two different waves, So the post-pandemic wave, I think, is completely different. So it's a completely different type of builders generation itself. So the type of support that they need is completely different. And we have been seeing this with Startup Lisboa. Our main services completely pivoted. So we started to be much more personalized, much more founder-driven. And I think that's the right approach, because right now, and nowadays, you don't need to learn the beabá, the basics of the basics about the entrepreneurship. You have a lot of and tons of people doing that. You need to really deep dive. You need good networkings. You need connections with international markets. You need people to tell you something and to tell you important stuff. So that's the first one. And the second one, I would say that when compared with the Web3, it's a different type of mentality. It's much more sharing, So the type of profiles that you have are much more like, I want to give. And it's really much more with this phrase of the give first, And I see that's with the Web3 community. Everyone wants to really give back, being around. You see like people like Mario from Taikai, like the guy is really that, So it's really the give back, giving to society, and to really, like Pedro Oliveira from Talent the same, These folks are like the image that you see from the ecosystem. And I think that these folks represent what this ecosystem is in Portugal. So giving back, everyone is open, everyone wants to collaborate, everyone wants to do POCs with everyone. So that's something that you see a lot with the Web3, and you need to rearrange what you have to offer, because it's much more about important connection that you can do. It's creating moments to share. It's creating these gaps that you can really deep dive on important stuff. And then it's much more technical, because I think the need nowadays in the Web3 is really much more in a technical base, because you are creating new infrastructure, new layers, and you need to do the massification thing. So it's much more about how to create great products. And for great products, you need great people. And to find great people, you need great connections and great networking. So I think as an incubator, it's a completely different approach, but I think we have been successful because we increased from 3 startups in March to almost 40 startups in Web3 in 9 months. So I think there was really a pivot of what we have been doing. And I think that was one of the things that why we are being so successful with Web3 companies, is because we try to understand what are the needs of a Web3 company, and we try to adapt and being personalized on that sense.
Tiago, I wanted to get from you not the perspective of the hub that it's working with the startups, but actually what as the feedback that you have been receiving from the companies that DeHouse has been onboarding. So when a company is looking for a place to establish itself, do the day-to-day work, receive potential clients, investors, whatever, what do they look for in you when they start working there and want to get the most of the place?
Yeah, like João just mentioned, the Web3 community, also because of the people that are working in Web3 companies, are very strong. The community are really it's really strong, and but they have like a digital community, and I think they lack physical space to do the things that João said, like networking, to meet new people, to create synergies. So I think in DeHouse, we can offer that to them, okay? We have a lot of events, a lot of activities, and this can generate a lot of networking, a lot of synergies between companies, among people, among companies, it is really important to create places where you can do that. I think the movement lacks of these physical spaces, and I think Startup Lisboa is also doing the same, or trying to do the same, and that's why we thought about making this space, the DeHouse Web3 space, or at least a Web3 friendly space to have people and companies to connect. we have the two models in our space, the Web2 companies and Web3 companies, and we with Taikai and Mario, João just mentioned Mario, we start this model and this idea exactly for that, to have a platform, a physical platform where they all can meet and talk to each other and share the same interests and network.
Yeah, but and I wanted to ask you again, the notion that both you guys mentioned was kind of the on how either Startup Lisboa or DeHouse can work as a builder of community, right? But also that as a challenge of you don't want to only be speaking to yourself, because Web3 is still a niche, so you want to attract different sorts of stakeholders, either from investors that are not still putting money in the game. You want to, as we mentioned in the beginning of the episode, you want to foster partnerships like between Avalanche and Amazon, of course, in the Portuguese scale. What is the hardest challenge that a hub has in that regard, on trying to onboard the next generation of users, either in the side of the typical user, or in the side of an investor, or in the side of a potential company that develops a solution?
I think the main issue that we have is because this is very new. All of this is very new, and the movement, like you said, is a niche. So it is hard to attract clients. It's hard to attract partners. It's harder, or at least harder to attract investors. But this is the road that we need to go. So this is the road that we need to take, and I think we are the first one that we are trying to do that. At least in Portugal, and I think we need to keep doing this, and to try to attract new clients, new companies, and doing that we will also incentivize another people to get into the movement, and other companies to also get in, and to try to do different things and build this network is very important for them, for sure.
Yeah. João, not necessarily taking an example of Startup Lisboa, but what do you believe is, and you have been working in several different Web3 initiatives, in general or in theory, what is the quickest way to make someone interested in Web3 that are not part of the industry? They can have some sort of notion, but if you want to, either a user or a company, if you wanted to pitch to them kind of Web3, what is the best way to do that?
Yeah. Let me just go back from also the question that you asked for Tiago, because I think Startup Lisboa have been doing a cool approach, because we mix together Web2 and Web3 cohorts. So, for instance, right now we are going to onboard 33 new startups at Startup Lisboa, 32 or 33. I'm not sure the exact number, but almost half of them are Web3, and almost the other half is Web2. So whenever we do the cohorts them together, both of them learn from their experiences. So the Web2, and the Web2 learn how the Web3 is working, what they are doing, how it works, how the reasoning is different. So whenever we have these two type of realities mixing together, is where you start to create the Web 2.5. So people that are understanding that, okay, I can use NFTs to manage my brand awareness. And instead of just pitching how complex, how decentralized, you pitch this, how this can really make a difference as a user. So how your user, the one that you are solving the pains, and you are working for them to really solve something and giving them a solution, why shouldn't you incorporate good technology that can really boost the challenges that they are facing? And that's where you create the bridge between Web 2 to Web 3, is when you start to go for the small things. So even today we were talking with one of our startups, and they needed a wallet. And first of the things was, okay, talk with Philippe from WalliD, understand better what is their approach, and see if there is anything that he can do. So you start to have Web 3 companies that are onboarding in different and very specific things, the Web 2 for the Web 3, and that's where you start to really mix together both realities and onboarding users. In my opinion, whenever we need to pitch for for folks that are not in Web 3, is the first thing that we need to learn is not pitching the technical stuff, you know? So not pitching, oh, this NFT is super secure, blah, 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 blah. No, just focusing on what that can bring to your company in a good way. So, you know, so go for really the value that integrates. So for instance, you can use this monkey, let's say, to basically create as a proof of attendance for everyone that is in this room. So in this room, we can create a loyalty club. We can create a way that we can talk with each other. We can really to understand better where we are going to use these type of things. We can create royalties and rewards for that. So start saying really what is the benefits instead of telling the solution behind if it is in blockchain or not, if it is crypto or not. Go for really for the pains that are solving. And I think that's the harder part, is to create things that are simple for everyone to understand. So that's the major thing that we need to solve.
Yeah.
Can I add one thing, Miguel?
Yeah, of course.
Like João said, and I already discussed this with him, we are trying to change our first narrative. We start saying that we were exclusive for Web3 companies, and now we are trying to say that we are Web3 friendly just because of that, just because of what João said. Because I think it's important also to onboard companies that have interest in Web3, you know, and if they have interest, but they can't get into the space, it will be much more harder for them to learn about Web3. And we are trying to do that. We are trying to do events and try to invite everyone from Web3, but also from Web2 businesses. And also inside DeHouse, we just closed companies like Web Summit, and we are putting Web Summit inside DeHouse because it is not a Web3 business, but it is a business that can help companies that are in DeHouse. And if you were in the Web Summit this year, half of the summits were about Web3
Web3
and crypto.
It was crazy, the transition from one year to the other.
To the other, yeah. So I think it makes total sense to also to merge these two type of companies and to do the things that João said, to try to connect the technologies that they have and to improve the platforms that Web2 companies have.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you now, moving a little bit into the Portuguese context as well.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that in terms of foreign communication and in terms of how the Portuguese ecosystem positions itself among the others around the world, the initial information that Portugal or how Portugal was communicated was kind of a region that could be a sort of crypto haven because there wasn't real regulation. People or investors or companies could have their actives here and manage them, and not having anyone bother them with the taxation or other sorts of issues. And we can expect that in the medium term that will disappear at some point, either at an American level or an European level. There will be some sort of regulatory framework that will start to be in place. And so the hard question that I wanted to give you is, as an ecosystem, if we don't mention the taxation or the regulatory stuff, what can be the Portuguese competitive advantage in this ecosystem? Is it the same as what is already mentioned in the startup, in the Portuguese startup ecosystem, as being the San Francisco or something, or the comparison to other things? Or are there in this ecosystem specific things that when we sell Portugal as a market, we can immediately mention?
That's a really tough question.
Yeah, I know. This can't be only easy questions. I need to make them hard ones.
But that's a tough question that I think there are a lot of work that needs to be done in a government perspective, in the municipalities perspective, because it's creating, and I think it's important to, and we say this a lot at Startup Lisboa and Unicorn Factory Lisboa, that we can't be good at everything, you know? So we can't say that we are the best in everything, in every single technology, so everyone should come here. I think we need to understand where we are good and where we can attract more talent. And that's something that needs to be done with the builders, with the Web3 community, with government, with municipalities, with incubators, that is to identify a framework in which we can understand where we are good. So I think that's the work that we need right now to do, is really understand what we understand why we are good for general startups, So we have a very good weather, we have a very good food, we have very good talents. So these we already know, and everyone knows these. But we need to go in depth. So how we can create conditions for people to really, if they want to give tokens for someone in their employees, how they can do it, and how easy it is to do that. If I want to establish my company here, I'm going to pay any profits for the NFTs that I'm selling. If so, how much? So all of these needs to be really solved as up in order for us to really to try to, one, bring talent to Portugal and to continue for them to build, and really to understand that after we have this law perspective really closed and already solved, then we understand where we can really be good at. Because probably we have better conditions because we have a better ecosystem in very specific things, because we have really good companies in gaming and NFTs. So why not being a Web3 gaming hub and start to onboarding more gaming Web3 folks here? So it's just a matter of understanding where we are really good at. And I don't think that the answer is already given by the ecosystem. So I think it can be by default for the government, or by default from municipalities, or by default someone else. It's really needs to be by default from the ecosystem to give that words of, now we are good at what. So let's start to put more people here that are related to this really specific topic. In my opinion, that would be my approach to try to do so.
But Tiago, do you feel that one thing that could happen is that it would be good to happen to Portugal is, for example, to have a company really becoming important in the overall ecosystem, because that usually happens when an ecosystem suddenly has the chance to build a company from within that becomes a global company, and Portugal kind of doesn't have that as well. PokerStarter is more or less that, but do you believe that that could be a good step for then build from the ground on the success of a company such as that?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, I believe that, because if you have that great company, you will incentivize other people to do the same. You will have a lot of people working with you. That people that are working with you will start having more ideas, because they are more awareness of the whole movement and the whole ecosystem. And I think this can generate another companies, another ideas, and more people to come to this ecosystem.
We are missing a Web3 unicorn, you would say, like to suddenly have a lot of companies like, if those guys made it, we are going to make it as well.
Because it is the same thing in Web2, right? We have like 9 unicorns or 8? Seven. Okay, 7 unicorns.
Seven
more or less. 7 more or less.
Exactly.
7 more or less. Yeah. One
7 with Portuguese DNA. Let's call it that.
DNA. Yeah. 7 with Portuguese DNA. 7 with Portuguese DNA. And when we start talking about these unicorns, these big companies, the environment in Portugal grow for sure. The environment of startups, environment of Web2 companies, this all grow. And also with the help of Startup Lisboa and Startup Praga, the great work they are doing, the Startup Portugal, the Web Summit, that it's always calling a lot of people, a lot of foreign people to Portugal to come and see the companies that we have in here. This all can contribute to this environment, and to start getting the ecosystem even bigger, and to at least to stop call the Web3 an ecosystem, to start calling Web3 like a big environment.
Yeah.
Miguel, sorry, just to one thing. I think also in that question, it have another perspective, that is not only to attract people to the ecosystem, but also to keep them in the ecosystem. And I think that's another problem, that is how to really keep the talent that we have here in Portugal. That's one. And the second one is how to onboard more people to the entrepreneurship field, not only Web3, because if we see this new generation is not as much as entrepreneur as the previous one. And at least at Startup Lisboa, and from different talks with different incubators, we have been seeing a super declining in number of Portuguese projects. And that's another problem because, yes, we can continue to attract more talent to Portugal, but what about creating more talent in Portugal to build stuff? And I think that's another approach, because it's not really only to attract talent, is to creating conditions for them to born here and to continue here. And that's another different approach.
Yeah, but it's cool that you say that, because that it kind of goes in line with my next question, which is, you guys are of course working in the development of an ecosystem in Portugal, but of course João, you are focused in Lisbon, and Tiago, you are focused in Porto. When you need to benchmark your work and look at success cases that other cities, other regions are doing, of course, in closer to the Portuguese scale and context, what could you give as a case study for an ecosystem that it's doing it right, and it's something that either Lisbon or Porto could follow? João, I can start with you.
That's a very good question. We can never forget Braga, for instance, Madeira as well. I think great benchmarks and great cities in terms of the work that they are providing to the entrepreneurs. And as Tiago already said in the beginning of the conversation, Braga is a huge tech talent for Web3, huge. The guys are like, I don't understand what they are doing, but they are doing very well in terms of talent they are creating over there. But yeah, in terms of benchmark, I think, again, that's why I'll always say this, because I have the two different ways that I work with the startups, the Web 2 and the Web 3. As the Web 2, I think it's clear that we can benchmark, for instance, Israel, because Israel, I think, is doing a great work to understand what they are good at. They are good at food tech. They are good in cybersecurity. Why? Because they need to do so. And they understood where the tech talent hubs they needed to create in order to continue to grow. And they understood by default, again, by the ecosystem, by the country, because they understood what they needed to create in order to be successful. And again, I think we need to better understand what we are good at. Again, by default, I think it should be from the private companies that need to say, okay, let's create things together. Let's invest in Portuguese talents. And for that perspective, I would say that, for instance, and now in a government perspective, we have the case of Switzerland, that in terms of tax regime, in the creation of hubs to be able to really tokenize everything, so you can tokenize your house at Switzerland. So that's crazy. So I think there are two different approaches. For the Web3, we need to understand how we can create tax. I don't want to say tax 7, but basically fields in which we can really test things. So like test beds for Web3. So in this area, you can test everything. You can create how you can tokenize this car, how you can tokenize this house. Let's create test beds for the ecosystem to work on this type of solutions. And we have tons of budget from European Commission to do this type of works. That's the part of the Web3. For the Web2, which we really just need to understand what we are good at and ask for the private initiatives to start telling for the public initiatives how they should work together. And I think it's just these two type of areas that we need to work on.
And Tiago, as a hub, and of course more specific in the context of DeHouse, that of course is associated with Porto, but of course as a co-working space, is there any example that when you need to think of the services that a place such as DeHouse should provide, someone is doing it really, really well, either in Portugal, but of course an international example of we should follow what these guys are doing?
Yeah, in Web3, unfortunately, we don't have that much options to look up.
Yeah.
Like we said, it is the beginning of everything, still the beginning of everything, especially in tech hubs. But we can have some ideas from another big hubs, mainly for Web2 that are doing now the transition also to Web3, the transition, or like Startup Lisboa, having the both of Web2 and Web3 at the same time. But we can look up for some examples, yes. But our idea is a little bit different from the general tech hubs. We are trying to build a decentralized offices, so small offices, but spread all over Portugal or all over the world in the future. I don't know, but we are trying to seek for partners to do that in each city. We talked about in Porto. We are doing this with Taikai. We are thinking at least 2 more cities, that is Braga and Lisbon, and we want to do that with a partner in Braga and with a partner in Lisbon. So we believe that we also have to be to have a decentralized business even in the hubs, because we want to try to have more spaces. More spaces with more spaces we will have more users, and with more users a stronger community. And this is a different approach, but I think this could be very, very good for the ecosystem and for the environment in general.
Yeah, that makes some sense, because there was I think some weeks ago or some months ago, there was a report from, I believe it was Web3 Career, which is a site that posts a lot of Web3 jobs, and in their ranking for the best, I think it was the best Web3 cities in the world, the first place was remote, which is fun, because there's not a specific city like the best city that is doing it the remote way, because of course the nature of the people and the engineers and marketeers that work in Web3.
They're all remote.
They're already like kind of digital natives and remote natives, because that makes sense of what you're doing. And with this, I wanted to reach my final question, which is, of course, imagine that you would have a wish and you could change anything or make a decision to change anything in the Portuguese market. What do you believe would be the most urgent thing to implement in order to truly put Portugal in one of the top spots when it comes to decentralized economies? João, I can start with you.
That's a tough question, but I would say we need, and if I had just one wish, it would be, let's continue to decentralize the services, let's continue to decentralize the access, and let's continue to decentralize everything that we can in terms of, if it's good for the society, let's continue that way. But one thing that I would wish is to centralize efforts and centralize energy and centralize initiatives in order to, 1, continue to educate more people, 2, continue to onboard more people, and 3, to continue to create more jobs, more position, more hubs, more hackathons, more initiatives, more companies, etc., in order to continue to grow this ecosystem. Because we talk a lot about decentralization, and that's really important. And I think that now we need to think about how everything being decentralized, how we can now centralize our efforts to really focus on what we need for the ecosystem to continue to grow. And that's what I think DeNites is doing really well, because is in a decentralized way, centralize all the efforts in order to continue to promote us. So I think that's really cool. And let's continue on that journey and that field.
Tiago, do you have a different wish?
I would. My answer, if you started with me, I would say 2 things, and the first thing was what João said. So I agree 100%. And I can say another thing that I'm always saying. I think João already heard me saying this. That is related with education, because I think education and entrepreneurship are very far away from each other, and I think there are 2 pillars that we need to have them closer. I think it is very important, because education is the base of everything, and we need more links with universities. We need more links with different types of education, like programming schools, coachings, I don't know, vendor builders, everything. And in a hub, if we can do that inside the hub, it will be very good for the ecosystem. And I think we can do that in the future hubs that we have. We are trying to do that in WorkIn, and we will do that for sure in DeHouse. And that's my wrap up for this question, because I think it is very important to link the education with entrepreneurship. They're very far away from each other, and they need to be very close together.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's like the idea of kind of the market following the universities, not the universities following what it's happening in the market. That's kind of the basis for success on any ecosystem. Guys, thank you very much for spending these minutes
Thank
with me.
you.
It was really nice
Our pleasure.
to talk with you. I hope you return in some of the future episodes. I wanted to invite everyone to check DeNites website for the next events that they are going to have. They have a season 2 of events that really are worth it, and I invite you to go to their website and see it. And I would also invite you to follow DeNites TV on YouTube or on Spotify, where the episodes will be available, and also follow us on TikTok or on Twitter to get the major announcements and news from the community. Guys, once again, thank you for listening. Thank you for being here, and good night.